here we have the 2.3.2. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be writing the equation of a line where all we need is 2 points. So we're not going to be told what the slope is. And we may actually have way more points than we need, which is kind of what this example is. So take a minute and copy down the table that's up there. We're definitely going to need the whole table. So take a minute and copy it down. And then we're going to start writing out steps. I think that might be helpful. Like step 1, what do I always do first? Step 2, what do I always do second? But first we need the table. Okay, step 1. All right, let's write our steps off to the side here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose from all of the points that are given to us 2 points that we like the best. So what you're going to need to do is choose 2 points. So in this case, 2 points from the table. It doesn't matter which 2 points you choose. It's a personal preference. There's really no wrong answer here. So let's choose -8 and -14 as one of the points. So you've chosen one of them. Now, to be clear, you don't have to choose a point that's right next to it in the table. You can choose any point you want, just as long as it's in the table. Okay, so we choose the next point. In this case, they could be right next to each other, but again, it's not necessary. So we choose the 2 points. Step 1, done. Step 2. So our next set of directions here. Second, we're going to use those 2 points and we're going to calculate slope between them. So use the 2 points. And calculate slope. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those 2 points that were chosen. I'm going to pull them directly out of the table just in the order that they showed up. Maybe not necessarily the order I chose them, although you could do that too. I'm going to write down my 18,64, which was one of the points that was chosen. And then the other point that was chosen was -8, -14. And I'm going to do what I did previously. I'm going to identify them as x, y. The first one is going to be x1, y1. And then the second one is going to be x, y. But give them the little subscripts of 2. And I'm going to take out my slope formula, which we know is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And all I'm going to do is just plug things in where they go, based off of the points that were chosen. So y2 is -14 minus y1, which was 64, all over the second x that was chosen, which is -8, minus the first x that was chosen, which is 18. And then I want to go through and simplify both the top and the bottom. So I'm going to do the math here. So on the top, when we type this in, we're going to get -78. Now, let's go through and type in the bottom as well. So when we type in the bottom, we get -26. Okay, now, depending on the limitations of your calculator, whether you have that negative sign or not, we should still know what this answer is going to be. I know that a negative divided by a negative is definitely a positive. So let's go ahead and type in 78 divided by 26. So I know the answer is going to be positive, so I'm just going to kind of ignore the signs for the time being. Okay, so I do get a +3. So I've had people ask me, when I get the slope, do I have to simplify it? And I say, no, like you don't have to. But take a look at this. I would hands down prefer to use the slope of 3 as opposed to -78 over -26. But they're both technically the same thing. So Ultimately, do you have to? Not really. It just might make your life a little bit easier if you do, though, at least in the future. Okay, that's step 2. Step 3. So here's my third step. Of the 2 points that you chose, now select one of those points. So you're kind of whittling it down. We had a whole bunch of points. We whittled it down to 2. Now we're going to take those 2 points and we're going to whittle it down to 1. So the third thing is we're going to choose one of the 2 selected points. Okay, so let's select -8, -14 as our point. So let's go ahead and write that down. So I think we're going to need it. So -8, -14. At the same time, I'm going to bring my slope down as well. So I know m equals 3. We are now at the exact same stage as we were with the warm-up, because we have the slope, 3, and we have a point. So I'm going to identify my point as my x, y. Now, next step. So step 4. Plug in the point and the slope to calculate b. So again, we are right back to what we just did. So let's start writing this thing. So I know my equations, y equals mx plus b. I know that my y from my point was -14. So I'm going to plug a -14 in for the y. I know the m we just calculated was 3. I also know the x from the point that was chosen is -8. I don't know what b is, though, so I'm going to put a plus b there. Now, my job is to solve for b. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the 3 and the -8, which I can do in my device, or if I already know it myself, I know that this is going to be -24. Now drop down the plus b, drop down the equal sign, and drop down the -14. We're still trying to get b, so the -24's got to go. So I'm going to add 24 to get it to cancel on both sides. I know that -24 plus 24 is 0. That's why we did that. Let's try to get that to cancel. Drop down the b on the right-hand side. And then if I combine the -14 and the 24 on the left, this is going to give me a +10, which again, I could type into my device to get, or my calculator. Okay, home stretch. Now we have the final step. Step 5. Plug in m and b to write the equation. Remember, at this point, we want the x and the y, those letters themselves, actually in the equation. So I'm going to say y equals mx plus b. Start with my basic. I definitely want to keep the y, the equal sign, and the x. Now the only thing I'm sliding into place is the m, which we calculated to be 3, and the b, which we calculated to be 10. Now, after all of our 5 steps, we were able to write the equation of the line. So here, on part A and part B, same directions as the previous slide, except this time I only gave you 2 points. So step 1's done. You don't even have to select the 2. 2 are already selected for you. So following our steps, same process. First thing that we're going to do is calculate m. So I want you to take this minute, identify x1, y1, x2, y2, a little bit of practice of the stuff we've been doing recently, and I want you to figure out what m equals. Let's do that first. Then, once we're good with that, we'll move on to the next step. So I've gone ahead and I've identified my x1, y1, my x2, y2. Now I'm just going to start slowly plugging in them in where they go. So hopefully at this point you've already finished the slope, and now this is just you checking your work. I think I get 1 minus 4 on top and negative 10 minus 5 on the bottom. Using the calculator on my device, I think that gives me a negative 3 on the top and a negative 15 on the bottom. So back to the, do I have to simplify slope? No, but man, I think the smaller numbers will make it easier. So I know a negative divided by negative is a positive. I also know that 3 goes into both the top and the bottom evenly. So I'm going to divide by 3. So that's going to give me a 1 on the top and a 5 on the bottom. So I think I have my slope. So it looks like m is equal to 1/5. Okay, that's part of the work that I had to do for this. Second, now we got to select a point. Now, it's actually kind of nice because the 2 points were already determined, and then your job is to just figure out from there. So we want to choose the point that we're the most comfortable with. Okay, so let's choose the 5, 4. So using that now as my point, so I'll bring that down here, my 5, 4. Remember that every point is an x, y. So that's going to be the x and y that I plug into my equation. All right, well, let's start plugging it in. So I know my equation is y equals mx plus b. I know that the y is 4. The m we just calculated was 1/5. The x from the point looks like it's 5. And then I don't know what b is. So I'm just going to leave it as plus b. Draw my line straight down. And then from here, well, I chose to make the parentheses around the yellow 5 that I plugged in fairly tall or big because the slope was a fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 1 underneath that so that when I multiply, I think it's a little bit easier. So let's see. I go straight across. 1 times 5 gives me 5 on top. 5 times 1 gives me 5 on the bottom. Drop down the plus b, drop down the 4. Now we know that 5 divided by 5 is just 1. So that's going to be 1. Drop down the plus b, and then drop down the 4. Last thing, move the 1. 1 minus 1 cancels. If I subtract, it looks like I get b is equal to 3. And now that we have b equals 3, and we have m, we can write the equation. So take this moment, make sure you get that equation written down. So using the 1/5 that we calculated and the plus 3b that we calculated, I could then plug in the m and the b into my equation. And that is my answer to A. What I'd like you to do, I would like you to do all of B. So calculate your slope, pick the point you like the best, plug it in. It's the exact same process of what we just did on this question and what we did on the previous slide. Let's see if we can do this. So do part B. And I think that's our answer for B. So I've got all my work done for my slope. So points, got to have a slope no matter what. After I have my slope, then I choose a single point of the points that were given to me. Pick the one that you like the best. It really doesn't matter which one you choose. Plug it in. So plug those points in as the x and the y, and then plug in the m. Calculate B. After you have it, plug everybody in where they belong into the equation. Got to make sure, though, at the very end that we want just to see the letter y and the letter x. The only numbers we're actually going to plug in are the m and the b.